What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the altar again, and this time we are here with Marco of the Almighty Xandria. Thank you for being here. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me with you.
Anytime, man. Anytime. It's so great to have you here. I was just hearing your brand new album, The Wonders Still Awaiting. Absolutely amazing. I consider it the best Xandria album thus far. For people who haven't heard the album yet, though, do you feel that the first four singles that you heard off of this album is a good representation of what the entirety of The Wonders Still Awaiting will sound like, or is that just the tip of the iceberg of what's to come?
First, thanks a lot for your wonderful words. I appreciate that. That is really great to hear that it's that well received. We worked so long on it, in the last few years, and it's great that all of that is coming over. you know.
Definitely.
Um, about your question, that's a really good question, actually. It was particularly difficult to choose singles because you don't only want to put something catchy, of course, with a chorus that people can sing along after they heard it one or two times only. But you also want to represent the album. And in that case, it's really difficult because it's so diverse. We try to show it a little bit by the singles that we released so far. Um, and I think you can already see by the singles that it is diverse, but there's much more to come on the album.
Definitely. Do you feel like for that this was just sort of picking up where you left off after Theater of Dimensions? Was this meant to be kind of a continuation of that, or with a whole new lineup coming involved, this is meant to signify like a new beginning for Xandria in a way?
Well, of course, on the outside, it's a new beginning with some new faces, Um, but on the inside, so just talking about the music itself, this is a bit difficult to answer because I was not really thinking of continuing or doing something different from the last album. I did not have that album in mind at all when I was writing new songs. I was just writing what came naturally, what just was popping up in my head, so, but you can say I did that all the time in the past. So it is a continuation of that thing that I was always doing. I was just doing what was on my mind and what I love to become a reality from my musical dreams. This is always what I tried to do, and this time it was just the same. Although it's, of course, the result is a bit different, but it was always a bit different from what we did before. And this is also something that is really important for me to keep it challenging, to keep it interesting, to keep it a bit refreshing, for myself and also, of course, for the people who listen to the music.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that too, because you mentioned you're going through what's on your mind. You also mentioned that The Wonders Still Awaiting is a very diverse album. With every album that Xandria has made, was did it always start off with maybe a preconceived vision in a way, or was your songwriting process a very organic, experimental, and rather improvisational process?
Speaking of the songs that are on the new album, it's really just um, things that I wanted to do in that moment. I was not really putting songs together to fit a certain kind of plan. So it's also not a concept album, just in case that question is coming up later.
You got
um,
it was so.
uh,
Thank you.
yeah, I saw it coming a little bit because, yeah, I know that the artwork and the title, it it can sound a little bit like that, but about that we can talk later when you want to actually ask the question for that. But but about the music, it's yeah, as I just said, it's just what came to my mind. Um, when I had an idea, I was working on it when I loved the idea, and not just when it was fulfilling some sort of plan how it should sound. And I think this is the reason why that album is sounding so diverse. You have this, I think, rather typical Xandria songs that are symphonic, and you have the metal riffs, but you have also a lot of different spices in there. Like one song is sounding a little bit like a James Bond title melody. That's the song Scars.
Yep. Nope.
Um, it was also not planned. It was just coming out that way. And at some point when we noticed that, we were just pushing it a little bit more because it was just so funny. I mean, not not in a way that we want to make a parody, but just because it was exciting somehow. Because I like the movies. I'm a big film score fan anyway, so and James Bond movies are also interesting for their film scores. They are overly very good. Like also apart from just the typical melody that you have in mind, but it's just so majestic, atmospheric, and there's a lot of melancholy in it also, and it has a very special atmosphere. And this is also something about film scores. Like you get very different vibes from them, and this is also something that you can hear in Xandria, especially on the new album, that you have like each song being like a little soundtrack to a little movie. So you have this song that is a little bit having this James Bond vibe, then you have another song that might be a little bit maybe Prince of Persia style. I'm talking about this last song, this 9 minute epic closer of the album, which has some oriental elements and like huge film score parts in it. Uh, yeah, I could just go on like that, but I get, I guess you get what I mean by that. It's just, yeah, very diverse. I was just seeing like each song being a unique thing on its own, and in the end, I was just putting it all together, hoping that it will fit.
I mean, every Xandria album does sound like it could be a soundtrack for a different type of movie, and I do see the references to artists such as Hans Zimmer or Two Steps from Hell, or a lot of fantastic film composers as well. And going back to that sort of concept thing that you referenced, as you mentioned, The Wonder Still Awaiting is not a concept album. But being as a fan of Xandria, who could tell what song will be off of India or Ravenheart or Theater of Dimensions, etc., it seems like every album has its own things that make it stand out. Has there ever been a time where a lyrical concept or a concept in general maybe influenced the sound of a Xandria album?
Musically, I wouldn't say that. Um, at least I would not have an immediate answer to that. I would need to analyze a bit. Um, but lyrically, yes, sure. For example, one song on the new album, I'm talking about the song, not the whole album here, but The Maiden and the Child, it has a reference. This TV series, The Handmaid's Tale, was inspiring the lyrics for that song. And this is also an overall topic, like societies, the civilization, the state of the world civilization, and also the way we deal with our planet and with each other in societies is a topic in quite a few of the songs on this album. And this is one of them. It was inspired by this TV series, but there are quite a few others, like You Will Never Be Our God, which is a song that is written from the perspective of a woman in a state which oppresses her basic human rights, especially as a woman, This is something that is right now, something that you see often in the news. And like I'm talking about Iran here or Afghanistan, and I really hope that people in these countries can get their human rights respected by a state in the future. And this was really touching me, this kind of topic. So I was writing a song about that. the video that we were shooting to the song is taking it a little bit further, like from that a little bit more focused perspective to a more general view on what's happening in the world right now. I think everyone who saw the video to You Will Never Be Our God knows what I'm talking about, as we are telling like a little bit of a symbolic story there with the protagonist in the end holding George Orwell's 1985 into the camera, written with 2024 over the title, which is supposed to say something that we need to be careful in what direction we are moving, like with societies being endangered by authoritarian forces who are about to damage and destroy the progress that we made as civilization since medieval times, when authoritarian state forms were all over. And nowadays, at least in parts of the world, we had accomplished democracy, pluralism, diversity, openness for other ways of life and love, it just started to be good. And it started that people could see that it's good and everyone can benefit from that. But nowadays there are a lot of forces, even in democratic states, who try to attack that. And this is something, together with the problem that we are heading towards an environmental catastrophe with the climate change, is something that was worrying me a lot in the last years. So I just needed to write about it. So you have about half of the songs on the album dealing with that kind of theme. And it's not just me, but also Omar, our singer, who wrote lyrics in that kind of vein.
Yeah. Was there maybe like a lot of research that was conducted into the making of those specific songs? It's funny what you mentioned, because I think that there's a difference between an album being a concept album and an album being conceptual, almost kind of like the spiritual versus religious element in a way. I consider The Wonder Still Awaiting to be conceptual. I think that there's a lot of lyrics that could inform and engage a listener into the subject matters you're talking about, but it's not Rage Against the Machine. It's not a strict political, album. Oh, so was there like a lot of research that was sort of like conducted with the subject matters that are addressed in this album?
Yeah, when it was about details, that I wanted to make sure that I'm writing the right thing there, that it's not something that is not correct. I was checking for that, of course, but the lyrics were mostly coming from everything that was happening in the last years and that we could see, like in the news, in documentaries, in even in movies or series that were dealing with those kind of matters. There were a lot, actually. You can see that in most of the series that are on HBO, Netflix. They are touching these kind of matters, actually. So you can, like, even in the Star Wars series, you can see this kind of thing, that it's in the foreground, it's a story, but you can see quite a lot of criticism in there about things that are going on in the real world that we are living in. And I found that very interesting. It seems that a lot of people that are aware of what's going on and that are interested are thinking about those things and are very concerned. So for me, it was not really a plan. It just happened. It just, because those things were in my mind, because I was reading about it, I was seeing it, and something like the pandemic, we have all been touched by it, and it was really, apart from all the misery and bad things that it brought to people, it was like a lens, because it was making us see a lot of things that were like a little bit hidden under the surface before, like all those people having the conspiracy theories about everything. Once there's something that bothers them, like they have to behave in a different way, like wearing a mask or whatever, they feel that sting, like they have to react to an authority without even thinking if it makes sense or not, that they want to rebel against that. Like if we like 20 years ago would have a movie, like Outbreak back then with Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah,
I guess a lot of people,
yeah.
yeah, a lot of people, I guess, were when the pandemic started, were sitting at home rewatching that old movie.
That and Contagion.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit masochistic, of course.
It's
Because
pretty
at that
messed
time
up.
we, yeah, at that time, I mean, watching that when a real pandemic starts, but it just shows that we want to know about these things and that we want to think and grab it. Um, but yeah, when you think that you watched that movie like 5 years ago, no pandemic happened, um, and you were seeing in that movie a lot of people making conspiracy theories that Dustin Hoffman, the protagonist who's trying to find a vaccine against it, is just trying to control the people by implanting the people microchips. How crazy would everyone have thought this is? But now when it really happened, people were saying these kind of things. Actually, I was sometimes sitting reading the news and thinking, what this, no one could ever think of a crazy movie like that. And
What's crazier is like a movie like Back to the Future, for example. They were predicting like in the
yeah,
years like 2015. I've been on the New York City subway where there's a sign that says no hoverboards allowed. It's like, what the heck? So art has always been a good means of predicting the future as well as demonstrate.
yeah,
Art has always addressed the past, addressed the present, and predicted the future.
mm,
But the thing is with Xandria's music, it's so emotional. And I could tell that you put your heart and your pulse and your
yeah.
mind into this music. So is it fair to say that what drives a Xandria song or a Xandria album is both internal sources of inspiration and external sources of inspiration?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a music fan as everyone else is. I guess every musician has inspirations from other music that he or she loves. It's the same for me. I kind of started uh, making music or actually wanting to have a band when Tiamat's Wild Honey album was released back then in '94. Um, so there's always some kind of thing that ignites it, and then that keeps you going, or like some bands that just influence you and you want to do something similar. Oh, I love that. I want to do something that is as great as that. Of course, you don't just want to copy it. That's I just wanted to say too easy, but sometimes I guess you cannot just do it because it's just made in such a good way that even when people try to copy it, I mean, it's happening. Um, you can see it doesn't have that kind of depth. It's missing something, and it's always a little bit better to be inspired. That is fine, but to make your own thing with it, you even if you get quite close to it, it's fine because as long as you are honest with yourself and with the people that this is what you really feel and this is what you really want to do with your heart, then everything is fine in music. And this is what I really do also with Xandria. Like everything I do, I mean, I think when you listen to the new album, you can see this is not something that is constructed by the marketing strategy of a management or production team or something. They wouldn't do it that way. It's too diverse for it. This is I was even doing things where you could think, hmm, maybe this is something that might be a bit strange for people even, and like bands that would think really commercial would probably not do that, I guess.
Fair enough. I did need to address this before we go, because this year does mark 20 years of the debut of Xandria of Kill the Sun. So
Right.
so with the 20 years releases of this of the debut, I just am curious to how the evolution has sort of changed and what we would hear off of Ravenheart and India and Neverworld's End and so on and so forth. I mean, like, are these? Would you say that every Xandria album is a retrospective of who you personally are in a way, or do you feel like it's a different portrayal altogether?
Yeah. um, First, I was thinking you would ask me to like describe every phase of the band and what made it different from, and I
I
was
won't give you
about to
that
say,
much
oh, do we
pain.
have 2 more hours? because
I
it
won't give
was,
you that much pain.
but you know what I mean, because hmm, uh, every album was a bit different, and it was a long way. I think the debut album is sounding like very different from what the new album is sounding, even though you find some similarities in it. Like, I guess it's just the me that is in there, but it's not just me. This is also something that I wanted to say when you said if it's always like, I don't know how did you put it, like a reflection of
Yeah,
my
yeah.
inner self. But it's not just me. I was not alone writing all the songs. I mean, on the new album now, I've wrote all the music, but it's actually the first time I was writing like everything from A to Z. Um, like also already on the debut album where I wrote most of the music, there was one song from the first singer, and on the albums after that, there's also. I mean, I was always um, writing the biggest part of the music and this overall musical vision of it, like keeping it all together, like, okay, we are going to write a new album. What direction are we going? And in the end, how to put everything together. This was most of the time it was me. Um, so I probably always had the biggest influence on it, how it sounded, and but it was not me alone, of course. So there were a lot of very important parts also done by other people, of course.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is for your songwriting inspiration. Did you almost like, we talked about, if there's research involved, the emotional elements that are channeled, in order to
Mhm.
just get that creative energy to write music, do you need to look for it? Do you seek out the inspiration, or do you have a place that you go to in order to cultivate ideas, or does ideas and inspiration just strike out of the blue for you?
Yeah, it has to be the latter one because when I seek it, when I or even try to force it, it's not really happening. Um, I need to be excited for something, um, and then I'm a little bit like a child, like, oh, I wanna have that, I wanna do that, um, and then I really jump on it and work on it until it's something uh, coming to life like the way that I had it in my mind. But when I just would sit down, okay, I need to write a song now because deadline is soon and I've been asked to do it. That's not really working for me. Um, so yeah, but fortunately, there are always those kind of phases in my life in which I have this kind of energy that I see things, that I hear things that just inspire me, and then it just comes out of nothing, just like you said.
But a Xandria's song with its symphonic elements and its heavy metal elements, I mean, there's so much incorporated. Every song of a Xandria album is Rome to me, meaning I don't think you could build a Rome in one day. So like when you work on a song for a long period of time, is it kind of harder to sort of like maintain that creative spark that started the idea to begin with?
Um, yeah, mm, sometimes like this initial idea is there and the energy is there, and then I work on it. And then I get like to the second chorus, and then I notice, I don't really know how to continue from there. And if I don't really have an idea, and I would just maybe, if I would have to force it, I would do something which is maybe not something that 1 year later, I would think, yeah, this was perfect. No, it was not. So I just leave it like for some days, and then I get back to it once I have this idea, which also just comes out of nothing. Then I think, oh, all right, this is what I have to do there. Then I sit down, and it sometimes comes in situations when I'm actually with people and or are at other places, and sometimes it's a bit awkward because out of nothing I have this idea, and then I just have to go out of the room, excuse myself, and grab my phone and just hum the melody on it to not forget it, like um, for when I'm back home later and I can work on it. But yeah, this is the way it goes. It just comes from somewhere, and then I have to deal with it.
That's how you always got to deal with it. The ideas of art, you just got to deal with it one way or another. Otherwise, it's gone
Yes,
forever.
that's true. Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. Is there just anything else with Xandria that you would like to promote with the release of The Wonders still awaiting? I mean, is there a chance you could bring Xandria back to the U.S.? I don't think I've seen you guys in the U.S. since the Cobra and the Lotus Once Human tour from 2017, around the time I first started this channel too. So
Yeah, that was you have been on it. That was an amazing tour.
that
I
was
loved
I
it.
was at that
It was.
show. Fantastic time.
Mm, thank you, thank you. That's really great to hear.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back a lot to this and the tour before that we had in the US. There were only two like real tours. There was also like one time the Prog Power, and yeah, I mean the 70,000 tons
Of course.
doesn't really count because it's on the sea.
And
But
every band
it starts in Miami, so
every band I've interviewed from Europe who hasn't been to the U.S. yet, they're like, "Well, we've played 70,000 Tons and Prague Power." I'm like, "Of course, those are the only two U.S.
yeah,
I'm starting to
yeah,
think so.
true. Yeah, we did that too. But it was not the first thing. I think the first thing was actually in 2014 when we went on tour with Sonata Arctica,
Okay.
which was also a little bit longer tour, like almost 7 weeks. We were on a bus together with our friends of Delane,
Yep.
who will also release an album right now and have a similar story like we do
And I'm
right now.
interviewing them today as well.
Ah, that's great.
Yep.
Say hi to Martijn if you're talking with
Yep,
him.
that's what I'm talking
for
to.
me.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also a great time. I'm thinking back to these times often, and I was often also in the last time when we were planning the next 1 or 2 years what we want to do, that we got to go back to the US. That's really something we want to do. So we will be working on that. You can be sure.
Look forward to it. We look really very much want you back. Thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Xandria. The Wonders still waiting, coming out via Napalm Records very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.